Every day, tons of plastic are produced and distributed across Uganda, cheap, convenient, and everywhere. But what happens when that plastic is no longer useful? From market stalls to roadside kiosks, plastic is a daily companion. But disposal is another story. Many Ugandans discard plastic without a second thought. The result? Streets and drainage systems clogged with waste.
Plastic remains the biggest problem in our environment because they block our waterways, they remain in the soils. The mindset of Ugandans, I always think maybe we don't love our country. How do you keep on littering, throwing plastic all over?
Much of this plastic doesn't stay on land. It washes into drainage channels, wetlands, and eventually into Lake Victoria, Africa's largest freshwater lake. It is from here that the White Nile begins its journey. The lake and river serve as critical lifelines, yet their waters are increasingly choked with waste.
A number of those rivers bring in a lot of inputs, but there's only one outlet from the lake, and that outlet is the famous River Nile. So anything that comes into the lake will move around and end up getting out of the lake through River Nile.
Scientists warn that Lake Victoria is becoming a cocktail of contaminants, detergents, fertilizers, human waste, and now microplastics. Pollution hotspots around urban centers are particularly affected.
Pollution is an issue not only in Lake Victoria but also in other lakes and many other surface water resources. The pollution is the intensity but also the complexity of the issues becoming much more. Currently we have different kinds of pollutants. We have the pharmaceutical pollutants, we have the plastic pollutants. It's not uncommon, for example, after a storm event in Kampala, you'll find that most of the drainage channels are filled with plastic bottles and also plastic material floating on water and all destined into surface water sources like the lake.
Millions depend on the lake and Nile for drinking water, food, and livelihoods. But the cost of treating this water is rising, and in some places, people consume untreated water straight from the lake. Meanwhile, fish populations are dwindling. New contaminants like microplastics are emerging. These particles are small, invincible, and persistent.
This whole issue of microplastics is something that we are increasingly looking into, because initially it was about fish and why is the fish declining and what can we do, what are people using to fish, why the illegalities. Now the whole issue of where the fish lives is now a cause for concern. And then we're saying, okay, the situation of microplastics, how are we faring?
There was a study which was done by Tanzanian scholars. For them, their design was to sample the fish in the market stalls. They were looking at the presence of microplastics. So they sampled the tilapia and the Nile perch, which are the most commercial species on the market. And they found that for each of the fish species they had traces of microplastics. An indication that even as human beings, even if we are careful how, we are getting the microplastic.
Uganda has introduced bans on plastic bags before, but they've largely failed. Corruption, politics, and lack of enforcement continue to block progress. At the same time, cheap and accessible alternatives are still missing.
We need more sensitization as government and more funding so that we undertake this challenge and we have a firm stand. We are already in the offering, we are bringing a bill to ban the use of polythene bags, totally. We started with 30 microns and above and below, but now we want it totally banned. But on the other plastic, slowly we are talking to our manufacturers. We want this to be phased out. Like we want to start with those with soft drinks, sodas, who have made it a habit to use the plastics, and then we claim we are recycling. That is not going to be enough because a lot remains uncollected.
Experts say the solution lies in rethinking the entire system, from enforcing existing laws and redesigning plastic packaging to providing better waste collection and supporting alternatives.
This is an issue which everyone must look at, not just to say, okay, maybe let me leave for the other ones maybe who are concerned, or me, I can maybe stay without, I can escape it. So this is a general issue which should be a focus for everyone. Everyone must be concerned such that we have a collective action to address it.
We are not yet at the levels that are very alarming, but we should not wait to get there. In other words, yes, we have found microplastics and the likely sources are these, but then let's control we should not just let that. Let's control the sources of pollution, of microplastic pollution, before it gets out of hand.
Lake Victoria and the Nile have sustained life in the region for centuries, but unless urgent action is taken, the legacy we leave behind may be one of irreversible damage.